It's Fill Your Plate Now, where every bite brings you closer to the farm gate and further from what's unhealthy. Now here's your hosts, Julie and Tammy, helping you live well by filling your plate well.
Hi, I'm Julie Murphy with Arizona Farm Bureau, and we're rolling along in these episodes. We've got a really exciting one.
And I'm Tammy Baker with Arizona Milk Producers. We do have an exciting episode today. I am thrilled that we are going to be talking about the first 1,000 days of life, which is from the conception of a child through the second year.
I'm very fascinated by this.
Yeah, what's so fascinating, I think, is there is so much you can do to optimize the growth and development, particularly brain development of a child, by what you're feeding the child. And you know, there's so many things we can't control. It's nice to know there's a few things we can do to help something like that along and help a child have its best and optimized growth and development.
Especially those first 2 years. And to your point, this is something that's important for us to be able to control as moms.
Absolutely. And you know, there's like 4 million live births per year. So that affects a lot of people. The mom, of course, but also the father and the grandparents and the friends that, you know, could take this information and help someone out that is pregnant or has a young child.
It's awesome. And the person that we're bringing on today, she's really going to give us some insights on this. I'm so excited about our guest.
Yes, we have an expert today who's going to be talking to us about the first 1,000 days, Sally Cummins. She has a master's in dietetics. She's a registered dietitian, and she's senior vice president of nutrition affairs with the National Dairy Council. Hey, Sally, great to have you with us today.
Hi, Julie. Hi, Tammy. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
We have all kinds of questions for you, but you just tell us what we're missing as we go through these. But we really think this is going to be a great topic to discuss. And, you know, might as well just jump right in. Wanted to see if you could kind of give us just an overview of, you know, why it's so important for parents to know about this and how it optimizes a child's growth and development.
Yeah, it's a very exciting topic. So I'm thrilled to chat with you about it today. Really, the first 1,000 days. So, Tammy, as you mentioned, that's the time between conception and pregnancy to a child's second birthday. So it's really brief, but important window of opportunity to support early brain development and help children learn to like healthy foods and set the stage for a lifetime as well of wellness, as we like to say. At the end of the day, this brief period ultimately helps children reach their full potential. And when we think about it and look back at it, nutrition and nurturing are the two most important things for parents to focus on during this special time. We want to provide adequate nutrition, a safe and nurturing environment, and a responsive caregiver relationship during this time is what we want to focus on.
That's awesome. Well, what about, and in fact, my niece, her child is 11 months old, and she's very dedicated to the nursing part of it. But there is this other component. How does a mother's diet during pregnancy and breastfeeding influence the baby's future health, immunity, and chronic disease?
Yeah, that is such a good question because we do know that nutrition during pregnancy in the first years affects our potential to grow, learn, and thrive. And most women who are pregnant are falling short on dairy foods, fruits, vegetables, seafood, and maybe consuming too much added sugars and saturated fat and sodium. And they also tend to be consuming too many refined grains, but not enough whole grains. The great thing is we know parenthood is a pivotal time when people are really more interested in making positive lifestyle changes for themselves and their families. So they're really leaning in. This is a time they want to make those changes and know more about how to best nurse themselves and their children.
Well, I'm able to say, whew, I'm glad to hear that because my niece is very conscientious about what she eats, especially at this stage now when she's breastfeeding. So she's doing good based on what you just said.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's kind of a trend throughout the U.S., getting a little too much sugar in their diets. Mm-hmm. So it's not a surprise that that's something that they have to watch. I was really fascinated about the role that diet could play in the brain development of a small child. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually one of my favorite topics because we know every parent just wants to give their child the best head start possible and help them reach their full potential. During that 1,000 days period, the brain grows faster than any other time in our life. So for me, it's really mind-boggling to think during this time, that 2, 3 year period, 1,000 days, a baby's brain grows more than 10,000 brain cells in the first month of pregnancy to 10 billion in the sixth month. So it's really a rapid growth during this period that's laying down foundations for cognitive abilities, motor skills, socioeconomical development, and all these things can influence the child's success in school and opportunities later in life. So what's needed is the right nutrition at the right time to nourish this rapid brain development.
Yeah, and I had said a little bit earlier, I think one of the exciting things is we can control that by what we
Yes.
feed our child. And again, there's so many things we can't control in life, but it's exciting that we can really help to optimize that child's brain development. I think that's great.
And it makes sense when you think how quick and sharp these little children are, some of the things they say. So now I understand because their brain is developing so quickly. In fact, I get intimidated sometimes about what little kids will say to you. It's like, okay, it's because their brain is growing so fast. How would you
Absolutely.
recommend then introducing some of these nutrients, and what are the best food sources that small children can eat?
So when you think about when to introduce these kids to these foods, it's usually around 6 months of age that you can start to offer different foods, flavors, and textures. So plain full fat yogurt exposes them to a tangy, tasty, creamy texture and provides protein and fat, iodine and calcium, and a variety of other nutrients to nourish brains, bones, and bodies. Beans and shredded meat offer protein. Minced avocado can offer healthy fats, and soft solids like scrambled eggs and shredded cheese can bring protein, choline, and iodine to the plate. So it's really making sure you're getting a variety of foods and nutrients in a form that baby can accept.
Yeah, my niece had brought my great niece over, or nephew over, and it was fun to see. She was picking apart some pork and putting them on his little tray, and then little pieces of cheese. It was fun to watch him pick at it, and I think he decided dairy is going to be one of his favorites, I'm sure, because he really went after the cheese.
I like him already.
It was cute.
Well, I love the expression, to nurture brain, bones, and body. I think that's an easy way to, remember that
like
if you're
that.
feeding the right foods, you're really helping them in all three areas those first couple years of life. And one of the things I learned, and shame on me, I'm a registered dietitian, I should have known this, but not too long ago I learned that, iodine is starting to become a problem, and it's so important in those early years. And much of the reasoning behind that is that we've gone away from that iodized salt. And gone to some of those fancy salts like Himalayan salts and some of the other salts, and they don't contain iodine. And that was a huge source of iodine for us. And just wanted to ask Sally, tell us a little bit more about iodine and sources and what it does for the brain.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're bringing it up because I feel like iodine is really a forgotten nutrient. So I'm excited it's getting more attention recently. So if we think back, iodine is needed to make thyroid hormones for mom and baby. And that's super important for metabolism as well as for your brain development and bone development during pregnancy and childhood. But what a lot of people don't know is iodine needs increase by more than 50% during pregnancy and breastfeeding to keep up with that thyroid production during this time of rapid growth. And so that's a pretty big jump. But we do know is inadequate dietary iodine in pregnancy can have a lifelong negative effect for baby, like developmental delays, lower IQ scores, thyroid issues, and even low birth weight. And we also know dairy foods like milk, cheese, and yogurt are excellent sources of iodine and provide a host of other brain-building nutrients that we talked about. Eggs are another good go-to source. They provide choline, iron, and B12, as well as iodine. And low-mercury seafood and cod and salmon provide iodine, protein, and omega-3s.
And for clarity for me, are you saying iodine is critical for both baby and mother, especially during her time when she's breastfeeding?
during pregnancy. And so for
Okay, so
mom, it's
both of them.
important during pregnancy and breastfeeding. And most women are actually, I should say many women are iodine deficient before they even become pregnant because they may not be using iodized salt, or they might be limiting animal foods in their diet, which are some of the primary sources. So during pregnancy and breastfeeding, as well as for the baby and toddler, when they're during that period of rapid brain development.
Wow. What about other milk sources like plant milk alternatives?
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk
You
about
know,
that.
aside from fortified soy beverage, plant milks just don't have the same nutrient package as real milk. But there's a lot of options for people who are having problems with lactose. So mom can try lactose-free milk, which provides the same nutrient package just without the lactose. Yogurts, live and active cultures also help digest lactose. And natural pasteurized cheeses are a great option as well. So think like cheddar or Swiss cheese.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. As you were going through that, I'm thinking, now, what would a baby rather have? Whole milk or salmon? And I'm thinking probably milk for
For
the
sure.
iodine part
Yeah.
of it anyway. And in terms of other nutrients, to really point out, are there others that you feel are really crucial to make sure the mom and baby are getting plenty of?
Yeah, there's a few nutrients that really have been recognized as being essential during pregnancy. Folic acid, a lot of us have probably heard of folic acid or folate. It's really important prior to conception and during that first trimester to help prevent neural tube defects. And the neural tube is really kind of the precursor to the brain and the spinal cord. So it's recommended that women that are thinking about becoming pregnant work with their physician to see if a folic acid supplement is right for them. And then they can also consume plenty of folate from foods like dark green vegetables and beans. And some corn and masa flours are also fortified with folic acid.
Well, and
Another,
go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to mention that choline is another really important nutrient for women that are looking to grow their family, because that also is key for development of the child's brain and spinal cord. And milk, cheese, yogurt, as well as eggs, meat, and some seafood are great sources of choline. And many of us have probably heard of iron as well, and the important need for iron for fetal development. Animal source foods like meats, poultries, and some seafoods are great sources of what we call heme iron, which is really easily, readily available and absorbable by the body. And then the plant foods provide non-heme iron, and you compare those with a vitamin C source to help with the absorption of those. So you can think hummus and red peppers, or spinach and lemon juice, or tomatoes, or iron fortified cereal plus some strawberries.
Wow. The thing that's coming to my mind already, Sally, and the takeaway that I'm getting from this is how important it is for us to all have a well-balanced diet, and certainly for moms during pregnancy and then when raising her child those first 2 years. So do prenatal supplements, though, take care of any of those shortcomings in the diet that, even if it's as well-balanced as I'm learning from you, Sally, that it needs to be for a pregnant mom, and then when she's raising those early developmental years for the child?
Right, right. I always recommend women talk with their health professional to determine what's right for them when it comes to supplements, but most health professionals recommend a prenatal vitamin and mineral supplement in addition to the healthy diet, because we know there are those nutrients that we just talked about, the folic acid, iron, iodine, as well as vitamin D, that our needs for those during pregnancy might really increase a lot. So always talk to your health professional first to determine what's right for you.
I know that a lot of times too. I remember back to those days when I was pregnant, they would have you have a glass of orange juice with the prenatal vitamin to help with that iron absorption, since that was a good source of vitamin C.
Yeah.
But yeah, so many things to think about, and it's so hard to make sure you're getting all of the right things every day. Anything you can think of that are common issues or mistakes that parents might make during that time when a mom is pregnant or in the early childhood years?
Well, I mean, we know that parenthood it's a challenge. It can be stressful. So I think always just giving yourself grace. And I'd like to focus on what to recommend or what to focus on versus potential mistakes. So I recommend introducing a single ingredient food at a time and then waiting a few days before introducing a new food to ensure baby can tolerate each new food. So don't get discouraged. It takes a while, several attempts to accept and enjoy a new food. But if you introduce them one at a time, so baby can kind of get used to that taste and texture, you'll likely have a better outcome. Um, Oftentimes too, I'll recommend offering milk in a sippy cup versus letting children walk around all day with a bottle. That way you can have better control over the amount they consume and ensure it's kept at a safe temperature. And I think too, many of us grew up with the Clean Plate Club. And so I recommend don't worry about that so much. Toddlers know when they're full. Forcing them to clean their plate will kind of distort their innate hunger and fullness cues. So just kind of follow their lead. They'll let you know when they're full.
Yeah, I think grace is a very important piece of it because everybody does the best they can. And I will say, as a registered dietitian, I thought I was doing a great job with my first child because she was eating all her vegetables and all of the things that everyone was having trouble getting their kids to eat when they're young. And then one day when I turned around, I saw her taking a handful of some green stuff and giving it to our dog. And so she wasn't quite as good at eating as I thought she was. So there's those unknowns that pop up from time to time, but I think we all try the best we can.
Are they not clever? Well, and along that lines, any tips on how to get small children to eat some of the foods that they truly need? We don't want this to be a battle of wills. We're kind of talking about that at the table. But
Right.
what are the tricks and tips to get them to eat something that they really need to eat?
Yeah. Well, usually in working with your pediatrician, you'll determine when your baby's ready to try solid foods. Usually it's around 6 months of age when they're starting to sit up, show interest in foods, reach out, try and grab from your plate or your fork. They're probably ready to try some solid foods. So once they've embraced, as I mentioned before, you can try one at a time. And then once they've embraced the new food, you can pair it with other complementary foods. So you can think about yogurt or cottage cheese with pureed fruits to introduce a tart taste with something naturally sweeter like the fruit. Or you might try melting cheese on top of cooked broccoli or cauliflower or carrots, or mashing and chopping it into bite-sized portions. And then I think, as we talked about before, it takes repeated exposures, and things might get messy, and that's okay. That's part of the learning process. So encourage babies and toddlers to smell their food and feel and explore with their food. That's part of that learning process. And also, as a parent or caregiver, make sure to engage with them during mealtime. Talk to them, engage with them, make eye contact. It's part of that. When I mentioned before, it takes nutrition and nurturing. And so really using that as a time to connect with your child.
That's great. That's great. And I know we've talked a little bit about the importance of milk, both during pregnancy and for the mom while she's nursing. Once the child has finished nursing and is going to the solid foods and milk, any other beverages that you would recommend included in the diet for the child?
Yeah, that's a really important question because we know what your child drinks during their first 5 years can really shape their taste preferences for a lifetime. So a few years ago, representatives from a variety of health organizations that support children's health, like the American Academy of Pediatrics, American Dietetic Association, and others, came together and put forth some recommendations on healthy beverages for kids. And what they came out with was really quite simple. The best choices are water for hydration and milk for its nutrient package.
Yep.
So around 6 months, you can start to offer your baby a little bit of water in an open sippy cup or a strawed cup. And at 12 months, you can introduce whole milk to your baby.
Awesome.
Keeping it simple.
Yep.
Yep.
What about cultural or family dietary preferences? Like,
Yeah.
I
mean,
how
I
do you
think parents
adapt?
can
Yeah, go
feel
ahead.
really confident
Mhm.
embracing their cultural and family preferences. One way to think about it is kind of building up to a quesadilla. So when they're infants, as I mentioned before, you can start introducing those solid foods around 6 months. So that might look like avocado slices dipped in some iron fortified cereal, with some pureed meat or beans and some yogurt. And then around 8 to 12 months, you can kind of transition that a little bit to mashed avocado and shredded cheese with mashed pinto beans, and then you can add in some diced tomatoes and some rice. And then around a year or two, you can offer them a soft tortilla with melted cheese and a thin layer with beans or meat on top of that, then avocado and salsa and whatnot. So you can see, you can, really eat what the family is eating, but there's different ways you can start to introduce it.
It sounds like the stages start out real simple, and then you're layering on as you go so that the child eventually is eating whatever that traditional food is, similar to how the adults are. How cool is that?
And I love that.
Absolutely.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say absolutely. And it's just a matter of offering it in a format that is easy and safe for them to eat, swallow, and digest.
And I love that you kind of were leaning towards the Hispanic diet when you were giving an example, because as I'm sure you know, here in Arizona, we have a relatively large Hispanic population. So that's something we always try to keep in mind when we're talking nutrition and healthy eating. That was great. And truly, if you had to summarize this, then what would you tell an expectant mom in terms of overall diet?
Yeah, there's so much good news when it comes to this front. I get excited, so sometimes it's hard to summarize, but I think for parents, as I mentioned before, they tend to be falling just a little bit short on those recommended food groups. So adding just one additional serving of dairy foods like milk, cheese, or yogurt, as well as fruits, vegetables, and whole grains will help get them on the road to meeting their nutrition needs during pregnancy and lactation. For parents and children alike, I like to think milk meals and water in between. So getting that nutrition from the milk and the hydration from the water. And as I mentioned before, if lactose bothers your tummy, you can try lactose-free milk or yogurt or hard pasteurized cheeses.
Yeah, there's so many nutrients already packed into a very natural food product. So we need to take advantage of it, or another way I like to say it is exploit it, because so many of those nutrients are already there in the milk. Or
And
whatever.
a nice thing to do with that too is also think plant plus dairy, because those nutrients complement each other so well. They're bringing different nutrients to the table, but they also bring different taste and textures too. So when you think about, yogurt plus berries or cheese and vegetables, they really work very well together.
That's awesome.
And we talk a lot on this podcast about farm to table. So shopping the perimeter of the store where you're getting lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, you're getting your dairy, you're getting whole grains and all the things you need.
It's all right there. Well, Sally, we have to ask you this. What are the 3 big takeaways that our new moms or expectant moms are going to be able to take away from this segment of Fill Your Plate Now?
I would say seize the day. The first 1,000 days offer a unique opportunity to help give children, help them reach their full potential. So it's a time for parents and caregivers to really take advantage of. As we mentioned earlier, give yourself grace and the parents grace. Parenting's a challenge. They shouldn't be too hard on themselves. Every meal, every snack, every day is a new opportunity to meet your goals and introduce kids to new foods. And also, as we talked about, be patient and have fun. It's okay if things get a little messy, because kids learn by exploring.
Yeah, it's really an opportunity to make those first 1,000 days for your child, beginning with conception. Beginning when you discover that you're pregnant, and then taking it all the way to those first 2 years. And the thing that struck me about this conversation is, and Sally, I may have to ask you to repeat, how many brain cells are being built in a child in that short span of time?
So we're going from tens of thousands to billions.
Wow.
And billions of brain cells are being laid out and growing.
And it just proves that if we're enjoying our food and enjoying and taking care of our child, that it's going to be on target and good for them. And it's during that time when so much development is taking place.
and we have you've given us such a wealth of information here. We thought it might be helpful to have some handouts available on our YouTube channel, Fill Your Plate Now, also on Arizona Milk Producers website, as well as Arizona Farm Bureau.
Correct.
So if you want more information or just want to have this recapped in paper form or online, you can go to those sites to get more information. Sally, you did an amazing job at summarizing something relatively complex in a short period of time and giving us some great tips. So thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate it.
We may need to have her back for some other issues around this and certainly around the dairy space.
That's true. Okay, stay tuned.
Thank you, Sally.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a very exciting topic for me, and I hope for the parents and families out there as well.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sally.